What if the most shocking thing about Betty White was never the headline, but everything hiding underneath it? That question stopped millions of people mid-scroll. And honestly, once you hear the real story, you'll understand exactly why. She was in her 80s when it happened. Most stars at that age have quietly disappeared, retired to private lives, carefully managed reputations, and the comfortable silence that comes after fame. Betty White did the opposite. She leaned in. She showed up. And she reminded an entire generation that the most powerful thing a person can do is refuse to become invisible. But let's go back, because you cannot understand this moment without understanding the woman behind it. Betty White didn't just have a career. She had a revolution. She stepped in front of a camera when television was still finding its voice, when women on screen were expected to smile, stay quiet, and never challenge the room. Betty challenged everything. She was witty when wit wasn't welcomed. She was bold when boldness was considered inappropriate. And she kept going through changing decades, shifting trends, and an industry that rarely rewards women who refuse to shrink themselves. What most people don't realize is that Betty White faced more rejection behind the scenes than her warm smile ever revealed. There were moments when Hollywood looked right past her. Moments when the roles dried up and the phone stopped ringing. Moments that would have broken someone with less resolve. But Betty had something that fame cannot manufacture and money cannot buy. She genuinely liked who she was. And that kind of self-possession is almost impossible to defeat. Then came the photos. And the internet lost its mind. At first glance, the reactions seemed like typical viral chaos, the kind that explodes for 48 hours and disappears just as fast. But something different happened this time. The conversation didn't die. It grew. Because people weren't just reacting to an image. They were reacting to what the image represented. Here was a woman who had lived fully, loved deeply, worked relentlessly, and she was standing in her own story without apology, without filters, without the carefully constructed armor that most public figures hide behind. In a culture that worships youth and quietly punishes age, that was nothing short of radical. The surprising part is what happened in the comment sections. Across every platform, something rare appeared: genuine emotion. People in their 50s writing that Betty made them feel less afraid of getting older. Women in their 60s saying they felt seen for the first time in years. Younger viewers discovering her for the first time and immediately understanding why generations before them had loved her so completely. One viral moment became an unexpected conversation about confidence, identity, and what it truly means to age with grace. But here's where the story gets interesting. Betty never set out to be a symbol. She never positioned herself as an inspiration or a movement. She simply kept being herself, consistently, unapologetically, decade after decade. And that consistency became the most powerful statement she ever made. Not a speech, not a campaign, just a woman showing up as exactly who she was, for 80+ years, without wavering. Fame does strange things to people. It rewards performance and punishes authenticity. It creates pressure to be everything everyone needs you to be, and nothing that makes them uncomfortable. Most celebrities eventually break under that weight. They reinvent themselves so many times they forget who they started as. Betty never had that problem. The woman you saw at 80 was the same woman who walked into her first audition decades earlier. A little wiser, a little sharper, but fundamentally, completely herself. And maybe that's the real reason those photos shocked everyone. Not because of what they showed, but because of how rare it is to see someone that free, that comfortable, that completely at home in their own skin and their own story. We spend so much of our lives performing for other people, shrinking here, adjusting there, carefully managing how the world sees us. Betty White spent 8 decades doing the exact opposite, and the world loved her more for it than almost any carefully managed image could have achieved. That is her legacy. Not just the laughter she gave us, not just the records she broke or the barriers she quietly dismantled, but the living, breathing proof that authenticity never goes out of style. Some people leave behind awards. Some leave behind headlines. Betty White left behind something far more valuable. She left behind permission. Permission to take up space. Permission to be exactly who you are for as long as you possibly can. If this story meant something to you, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. More stories worth telling are waiting for you right here. Don't miss what's coming next.